Hello, my name is H.E. Roselle, and I'm the author of the Benton County series, and this is the backstory to Escape to Benton County. And we are on location today deep in the green swamp along Hatchet Creek, which is one of my favorite places. Now, on my next birthday, I'm going to be 80 years old. And you hear people talk about, oh, 60s, they're the new 40s. And they'll say, well, the 70s are like the 50s used to be, but 80s, they don't say anything about the 80s, that's just 80. And in those 80 years, I've lived through some dramatic, profound, history-changing times. I remember in my 11th grade class, the principal of the school came on the PA system to tell us that John Kennedy had been killed. History-changing. And I remember thinking how remarkable it was that men were walking on the actual moon. You know, we went out at night and looked at the moon and think, you know, we've got people, America has people up on the moon. I remember the shock of the day when our twin towers were knocked down. And at the time, I was a Red Cross disaster volunteer, and they flew us up to New York. And as we were flying into LaGuardia, the pilot didn't say anything. He just tilted the plane over, and we could look right down into that pit with all the rubble, and the fire was still burning. That's pretty life-changing. But just as shocking and unsettling as those things were, the January the 6th, 2021 attack on our capital, to me, was just as shocking. Watching that mob whose intent was to overturn a presidential election while shouting, "Hang Mike Pence." It was shocking and it was disgusting. As the smoke settled and I had time to think, I wondered, what kind of person who claims to love America, and I believe that they love America, why would they do such a thing? Were they all crazy? Were they all just seething, angry haters? Were they just touring the Capitol? Just hanging out? Or as Donald Trump said, it was a day of love, a beautiful thing. It didn't make sense to me. So I decided to try and discover who were the rank and file of that mob that attacked our capital. So I had me a research project to do. At the time, there were three main far-right militia groups who orchestrated the attack. They were the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, and to a lesser extent, the 3%ers. I didn't want to learn any more about the founders and leaders of the group. We'd all seen a lot of that in the news. Like this guy. Stewart Rhodes, the leader of the Oath Keepers, who strutted around the country in his $1,000 cowboy boots, attending rallies and making speeches, while his wife and children were at home living in poverty, getting food from food banks. She sued for divorce on the grounds of mental and physical abuse and financial neglect and won. He was a real American hero, wasn't he? No, I wanted to understand the mechanics and the truck drivers and the school teachers who were so angry that they heeded the call to come to Washington. It's going to be wild. And then followed the orders. You've got to be strong. And you've got to fight like hell. In studying the backstories of the lesser-known participants, mostly through their trial records as reported by the news, it became clear that they were just regular people, office workers, and a lot of retired military and a lot of truck drivers. Normal people living their lives of quiet desperation, maybe a little bored, and they were bored until they got hooked on Fox News, and worse, the shock jocks of the far-right radio. And much, much, much worse, QAnon conspiracies that were going wild there. All three of these media, they use one common thing to keep the audience coming back, is fear. And fear is the mother of hate. So you watch those and they're telling you how terrible things are and how bad your life is going to be because of those guys. And then if you're frightened enough, you will eventually start hating. The call to Washington gave them a chance to be part of something big. These quiet, regular people, all of a sudden they were part of something big, something important. And it gave them a way to vent their rage. You know, some people's life just doesn't make sense when they get up in the morning unless they've just got somebody to hate. You know, you get up and they fall back to why they're afraid and who they've got to hate, and then that gives them a reason to go on. I took snippets from the biographies that I found of the insurrectionists, and I created composite characters. And this book is about those composite characters. Now, there's also a parallel story of a girl who overhears a plot to assassinate the president. And when she realizes that her life is in danger, she has to race across the country to the safety of Benton County. And there's also a sub-story where it is revealed that the President of the United States, in my story, who is much like Donald Trump, and his senator friend, who resembles Lindsey Graham, are actually cross-dressers, and that they spend hours at their exclusive hotels dressing in beautiful gowns and putting on makeup and trying on jewelry and trying to get the most beautiful shoes that'll fit on their manly feet. So you think, oh, that's crazy. Picture Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump in drag. Picture. It's easy to picture. It's really easy to picture. You can't get it out of your mind. So to wind up this, I would like to read you a little from the epilogue of the story, the afterword. Okay. Okay, this is from the book. I've tried to have a little fun and explore the mindset of the various groups that attacked our Capitol on January the 6th, 2021. As much as we would like to believe that the attack was caused by a misunderstanding that got out of hand, the findings of the January 6th Senate Select Committee leaves no doubt that the attack was orchestrated. If you didn't watch that, you don't have any way to really understand it. And I think you can still find it online. Watch it. I watched every minute of it. The villains of that day are obvious. They condemned themselves with their own words and with their actions. But there were also heroes. If you've read the preceding tale, it's obvious that I'm a liberal progressive. With those natural biases that come from living in a polarized society, it took me some time, I admit, to recognize who the heroes were. The integrity of America's 2020 presidential election was preserved by a small group. Heroic state and local election officials from around the nation and the Vice President of the United States. They stood up for the Constitution and denied the big lie. I watched them, one after another, as they testified before the January 6th committee. In spite of threats to their lives, they testified, while their families were sequestered in safe houses. They testified, knowing that their words could end their careers. They testified. They were all heroes, and they were all Republicans. As a lifelong Democrat, it's easy for me to condemn the insurrectionists who attacked our Capitol. As an American, I salute those Republicans who defended our democracy. Now, in my research, I uncovered a few quotes that I think really, to understand the attack on the Capitol, listen to these quotes. Okay, the name of this is The Big Lie. Never allow the public to cool off. Never admit a fault or wrong. Sound familiar? Never admit there may be some good in your enemy. Never leave room for alternatives. Never accept the blame. Sound familiar? Concentrate on one enemy at a time and blame him for everything that goes wrong. People will believe a big lie sooner than a little lie. And if you repeat it frequently enough, people will sooner or later believe it. Does that sound familiar? Those words were written by Adolf Hitler in Mein Kampf. Another one, there were so many conspiracy theories going on. It was just on the internet. It was, whoa, hurry up and read this before they delete it. Okay, here's some ideas on conspiracy theories. Nothing happens by accident. Everything bad results from the intentional decision of a bad actor. That's the way the conspiracy theories, that's the way they want you to think. And nothing is as it seems. You know, there's a deep government conspiracy going on that they're trying to pull one over on us. And everything is connected. Evil plots behind bad happenings, they're all related. And those guys did it. Those other ones, the other half of the country, they're the evil ones. And now my favorite, by one of my favorite philosophers, anyone who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Think about the absurd things that people were believing, and then think about that atrocity that they committed. Okay, on Amazon, they label this book as political satire. Why don't you order a copy and read it and see if you can figure out who it is behind the plot to kill the president? Who did it? Thank you.